The SR-71 has redefined the boundaries of military aviation. No other reconnaissance aircraft has ever flown faster, higher, or even more daring through hostile skies around the world. Its unmatched speed and stealth has placed it above other fighter jets, as it remains a force to be reckoned with. But what missions has this technological marvel been involved in? What are the most impressive facts about this formidable airfighter? Get ready to dive into the most insane SR-71 Blackbird engagement scenarios ever recorded. From high-speed chases to intense dogfights, these scenarios will leave you on the edge of your seat. Imagine being pursued by enemy aircraft at speeds exceeding Mach 3, with the SR-71 effortlessly outmaneuvering them at every turn. Or picture a daring reconnaissance mission deep into enemy territory, dodging surface-to-air missiles and enemy fighters to gather crucial intelligence. Come along with us as we delve into the world of the Blackbird to uncover the details of its combat missions. The uniqueness of the Blackbird. What makes this bird so unique? Speed is an important factor when developing an aircraft, because this factor can single-handedly give an upper hand in unfavorable situations, and also help to avoid and escape threats like missiles and even radar systems, just by simply flying faster. The SR-71, Blackbird as it is popularly known, is not just any random aircraft. It was developed as a black project from the Lockheed A-12 reconnaissance aircraft during the 1960s by Lockheed's Skunk Works division. This aircraft was one of the first aircraft to be designed with a reduced radar cross-section in mind. Stealth is the name of the game with this aircraft. This technological marvel is unique for its cruise ability, as it holds the world record for being the fastest air fighter that has ever been developed in the history of military aviation. However, the Dark Star, once it is operational, will dethrone the Blackbird. SR-71 is designed to cruise at a mind-blowing speed of Mach 3.2. That's right, folks. This aircraft flies at a speed which is over 3 times that of sound. Mach is the ratio of an object's speed to the speed of sound. For example, something traveling at Mach 3 is traveling at 3 times the speed of sound. The speed of sound varies depending on many factors. In dry air, at 0 degrees Celsius, the speed of sound is about 331.3 meters per second. Interestingly, aside from the Blackbird being the fastest aircraft in the world, this jet is also the highest flying production aircraft ever built. Unlike other aircraft, it can fly at altitudes up to 85,000 feet, putting a great distance between itself and the ground. This is another reason why the airfighter is not easily spotted by threats, but the other way around. In addition to its uniqueness, Blackbird is equipped with advanced technologies that make it useful for spying from the air, including sensors for intercepting communications, radar for looking sideways from the aircraft, and cameras that keep it aware of its surroundings. During its missions, it flies at incredibly high speeds and altitudes, which allow it to elude threats, including missiles, merely by flying faster. This fighter sounds like a dream to any military, so it is surprising that it has some challenges. Achieving such remarkable performances came with some significant drawbacks. According to CNN, the Blackbird's reliability was a concern, resulting in the loss of 12 out of 32 aircraft due to accidents. Merlin, an expert in aviation, emphasized the immense logistical challenges involved in operating the Blackbird. He compared the preparation for a mission with the Blackbird to a space launch, which means that it requires total attention to detail, near-perfect conditions, and a substantial workforce. The pilots are required to put on specific attire to protect them while in the cockpit of the aircraft, especially when airborne. This protective suit looks more like a spacesuit, more similar to ones that astronauts wear on space shuttles than a traditional military pilot uniform. Reports state that they can be very uncomfortable to wear at times. The cockpit becomes insanely hot at high speeds, but this prompted pilots to use the glass surface to heat their meals during long flights. And here we thought they were roughing it with MREs. Another problem that surfaced was mentioned by Jim Norris, who was part of the team that designed the Blackbird. He recalled the challenges that were always experienced in the process of starting its engines. The special oil used in the engines which worked well at the extreme temperatures of Mach 3, became nearly solid in temperatures that dropped below 86 degrees Fahrenheit. Also, in the early days of Blackbird's development, it was powered by two Pratt & Whitney J58's axial flow turbojet engines. The engines were started with the assistance of two Buick Wildcat V8 internal combustion engines that were externally mounted on a vehicle referred to as an AG-330 start cart. Once the first J58 engine was started, the cart was repositioned to start the aircraft's other J58 engine. Eventually, a quieter pneumatic start system was developed for use at main operating bases. Norris mentioned that he could vividly remember the loud roar of these engines, revving up to over 6,000 revolutions per minute for more than 15 seconds, day and night. The loud noise was certainly a drawback from the stealth capabilities that it was supposed to possess, but that definitely didn't affect its performance in the skies. Now that we know how this bird came to be, let's get into the missions. And boy, does this aircraft have some outstanding missions to its name. On December 22, 1964, the SR-71 had its first flight at the USAF Plant 42 in Palmdale, California, with Bob Gilliland as the pilot. During testing, the aircraft reached a top speed of Mach 3.4. However, during a real mission over Libya, Major Brian Schul reported that the fighter jet went even faster, exceeding Mach 3.5 in the process of avoiding a missile. The first SR-71 to be used in service was given to the 4200th Strategic Reconnaissance Wing at Beale Air Force Base in California in January 1966. It arrived at Kadena Air Base in Okinawa, Japan on March 8, 1968 for some missions which were called Glowing Heat, and the whole program was known as Senior Crown. On March 21, 1968, Major Jerome F. O'Malley and Major Edward D. Payne flew the first operational SR-71 mission from Kadena Air Base in Japan. The mission was known as Glowing Heat, while the program itself was called codename Senior Crown. This particular aircraft, with serial number 61-7976, flew a total of 942 missions, including 257 operational ones, which accumulated to 2,981 flying hours. However, the Air Force could only fly one Blackbird in a week because it needed a lot of time for maintenance after each mission. Often when the plane came back, it had missing rivets, panels that were coming apart, or other broken parts that needed to be fixed or replaced, like the air intakes. Sometimes it took a whole month to get the jet ready to fly again because of all the repairs needed. Rob Vermland, who manages Lockheed Martin's Advanced Development Program, said in a 2015 interview that the SR-71 couldn't handle flying missions too often. He explained that even if there was a mission planned and the plane was in the hangar, it would take about 19 hours to get it ready to fly safely. Since the beginning of the Blackbird spying missions over North Vietnam and Laos in 1968, they flew about one mission per week for nearly 2 years. By 1970, they were doing about 2 missions per week, and by 1972, they were flying nearly one mission every day. Unfortunately, during these missions, 2 of these airfighters were lost, one in 1970 and the other in 1972, both because of mechanical problems. Throughout the Vietnam War, the North Vietnamese fired around 800 surface-to-air missiles at the Blackbird, but none of them hit their target, thanks to its exceptional speed. However, pilots did notice that some missiles which were launched without radar guidance and went undetected at launch came as close as 150 yards from the aircraft, but not so close to being of any danger to the fighter jet and its pilot. The Blackbird's missions in Europe were based at Royal Air Force Base Mildenhall in England. They had 2 regular routes each week. One route went along the west coast of Norway and up the Kola Peninsula, where the Soviet Navy's Northern Fleet had many big bases. There were a few times when the aircraft had to make emergency landings in Norway, with 4 of them in Bodø and 2 in 1981 and 1985. Rescue teams were sent in to fix the aircraft before they could take off again. Only one crew member, Jim Zwayer, a Lockheed Flight Test Reconnaissance and Navigation Systems specialist, was killed in a flight accident. The rest of the crew members ejected safely or evacuated their aircraft on the ground. The other route, known as the Baltic Express, started from Mildenhall and passed through Jutland and the Danish Straits before heading out over the Baltic Sea. During the Cold War, the USSR controlled the airspace from the DDR to the Gulf of Finland, while Finland and Sweden remained neutral. This meant that a NATO aircraft had to fly through a narrow corridor of international airspace between Scania and Western Pomerania, which was watched by both the Swedish and Soviet air forces. The Blackbirds followed a counterclockwise loop for about 30 minutes, flying along the Soviet Union's coastal border. Then they slowed down to Mach 2.52 to turn left south of Åland and followed the Swedish coast back towards Denmark. If they tried to turn at Mach 3, there was the risk of them entering Swedish airspace, prompting the Swedes to send Viggens to intercept them. The Swedish and Soviets had the opportunity to scramble their interceptors because of the monitored entry point and fixed route. Their radar stations would detect Su-15s from Latvia and MiG-21s and MiG-23s from Estonia, dispatched by the 15th Air Army, although only the Sukhois had a slim chance of intercepting the Blackbird. The main Soviet threat came from the MiG-21 that were stationed at Finno-Eberswald in the DDR. Sweden observed that a single MiG-25 Foxbat would usually be sent from Finno to intercept the SR-71 on its way out of the Baltic Sea. Flying at 22 kilometers, the Foxbat would regularly close in to an altitude of 19 kilometers, precisely 3 kilometers behind the SR-71, before disengaging. The Swedes interpreted this pattern as a successful simulation of a shootdown by the MiG-25. The Swedes, asserting their neutrality, would dispatch Saab-37 Viggens from Ängelholm, Norrköping, or Ronneby. Limited by a top speed of Mach 2.1 and a service ceiling of 18 kilometers, the Viggen pilots would line up for a frontal attack, relying on their advanced avionics to climb at the right time and achieve a missile lock on the SR-71. Target location data supplied to the Viggen's fire control computer from ground-based radar ensured precise timing and target illumination, with the most common site for the lock-on being the narrow stretch of international airspace between Åland and Gotland. Out of 322 recorded Baltic Express missions between 1977 and 1988, the Swedish Air Force claims to have achieved missile lock on the SR-71 in 51 instances. However, with a combined closing speed of Mach 5, the Swedes relied on the Blackbird maintaining its course unchanged before the missiles could be deployed to hit the target. On June 29, 1987, the Blackbird was sent on a mission to spy on Soviet activities around the Baltic Sea, when one of its engines exploded. The plane, flying at 20 kilometers altitude, quickly lost height and turned 180 degrees to the left, heading towards the Swedish coast over Gotland. This violated Swedish airspace, so 2 unarmed Saab JA-37 Viggen that were on an exercise nearby in Västervik were sent to check it out. Their mission was to assess the situation and identify the aircraft. It was clear that the plane was in trouble, so the Swedish Air Force decided to escort it out of the Baltic Sea. Another pair of armed JA-37s from Ängelholm replaced the first ones and completed the escort to Danish airspace. For over 30 years, this event was kept secret. When the report was finally made public, data from the NSA revealed that multiple MiG-27s were ordered to shoot down the SR-71 or force it to land right after the engine failure. One MiG-25 even locked a missile onto the damaged SR-71, but because it was under escort, no missiles were fired. However, on November 28th of 2018, the 4 Swedish pilots involved were awarded medals by the US Air Force for their actions. The Blackbird, known for its supersonic speed and advanced technology, boasts several remarkable features. If you have ever wondered what causes the diamond pattern in its exhaust, it is the superfast afterburner, which creates shock waves forming the pattern. This afterburner is always on, except when refueling. Flying at over 3 times the speed of sound generates extreme temperatures, but the Blackbird has a tough titanium alloy outer skin protecting it. Even its special tires, made with aluminum and latex filled with nitrogen, which can handle intense pressure. Pilots wear modified spacesuits for safety at high altitudes, while the specially designed engine inlets contribute to the aircraft's speed and agility. Speaking of speed, as mentioned earlier, the Blackbird can fly at over Mach 3, setting several world records, including a historic flight to the Smithsonian. Surprisingly, the museum's SR-71 was flown by former museum staff members during operational missions. It even made a movie appearance in Transformers 2 as Jetfire. After its secret missions, the aircraft spent years stored in a hangar before being displayed at the Stephen F. Udvar Hazy Center. One interesting detail to wrap up the video is the Skunk Works story. The nickname Skunk Works comes from a very funny story. The first Lockheed factory was close to a smelly plastics plant, and the stench would drift over. An engineer, Irv Culver, started answering his phone with Skunk Works as a joke. It caught on, and eventually it became the official name for Lockheed's Secret Projects division. The little skunk on the tail of the SR-71 is the logo of this secret factory. If you enjoy learning about military aircraft and the brave men and women who flew them, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel for more exciting content. And don't forget to leave a comment below sharing your thoughts on the SR-71 Blackbird and its incredible engagement scenarios. Thanks for watching, and we will see you on the next one.